Hey,
Hi, Phil. How are
I'm,
you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing great.
Good, good.
Excited to
I
have you
had,
as my guest.
I'm sorry.
I'm excited to have you as my
Oh,
guest.
well, thank you so much for having me.
Of
I'm
course.
glad I actually logged in. I was, I wasn't sure I had the right contact info. Let me shut my phone off here. Okay. Anyway, yeah, so this should be good. Did you have a chance to go through the questions and
Oh,
everything?
I did. They're great. And we
Okay.
even talked about a couple other ones that we had that if we have time at the end, we
Yeah.
can ask you if that's okay.
Oh, yeah, yeah. That's what I think. We're doing this as a conversation, right? I'm not
It's a
going to be
conversation, it's just casual.
good. Okay. I'm
Yeah,
not
as you can tell, my hair is casual
Oh,
today.
no, it looks very nice.
I've been
Very
out
good.
showing property. So,
Oh, good.
oh,
Good.
yeah, yeah, and I have my friend. She's not showing her beautiful face, but Elizabeth Jabeth is on. She's a friend of mine, longtime friend, and she
Oh,
actually relocated up to Ventura. She lives up
oh,
in
nice.
Ventura.
Oh, yeah. What part?
Elizabeth lives. Don't
I'm
you?
here downtown, right
Yes.
Oh, how nice.
near City Hall.
Oh, nice. Well, why don't you join us?
You
Um,
know what? I missed whatever. I just stepped back in. I had to step away for a minute. So am
yeah.
I joining you in this meeting, or
You
did you?
are. Well, no. When we start on Facebook Live, which is in 5 minutes,
Okay.
Oh, I see.
we will pin Phil and myself, and you'll sort of disappear. But right now,
But will I be able to view through Zoom? Because I am not.
yes,
Okay, perfect. Okay,
yes,
excellent. I'm
yes.
looking
Stay
forward
on
to this.
Zoom.
Oh,
Thank you,
good.
Cynthia.
Good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So do you like Ventura?
Oh, I love it. Yes. After many
It's
years in LA, yes.
it's nice. I spend a lot of time up in Silver Strand in Oxnard.
Are you a surfer, Phil?
Say I sail. I
Oh,
go sailing.
nice.
Yeah, but
Sweet.
it is a surfing beach.
It is.
Yeah. Yeah, but I love that downtown area, Ventura. You been through there, Cynthia?
I have.
Yeah.
Yes, I
Yeah,
have.
it's really fun. I like that little Irish bar on the corner. I forget what it's called.
Dargans.
There you,
Dargans. Yep.
yeah, if you're there on a Friday at around happy hour, a bunch of young girls that are learning the Irish dance, they come in, and everything from like little 5-year-olds up to junior high kids doing the Irish dance, whatever they call that, whatever it's called. It's really
Yes,
fun.
I have not taken advantage of that, and we're within walking distance. So thank you for that insider tip.
That's all pre-COVID. So I
Right.
don't know what life is like right now, but that's how it was before.
Oh, I'll put it on the list.
Yeah, nice. Well,
Last
that's
time I
really
was there, I went up and I took the kids and we stayed at the Mandalay Bay. I'd always wanted to do that, and I had a bunch of points, so I went up there. Hi, Bill. Welcome.
Hey, Bill.
And but everything was kind of closed along the Ventura downtown
Yeah.
area, so I
Oh
didn't get
yeah,
to
yeah.
enjoy
No,
it.
it's fun. It's fun.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, Cynthia, we still have a wine date, so
We
yeah.
still do. We still do. And I can't wait. I'm heading up there because my daughter's going to go to Santa Barbara City College.
Oh my
So
gosh.
I'll be going up that way often.
Okay, put me on the list. My
Yeah.
son he just finished finals at Santa Barbara City College
Oh,
and
really?
got into Berkeley's engineering school as a transfer. Yeah, so we're very
Wow,
excited.
I
wow.
totally forgot that you had told me he was doing that.
Yeah, no, he had a great experience there, and your daughter will have more fun now that they're in person again, hopefully.
Yes, exactly. I'm so excited for her. I think it's a great choice.
Yeah, I echo that sentiment. All right,
Yeah.
well, I'm going to put myself on mute,
All
and I'm
right.
looking
Good to
forward to
see you.
pleasure to
Is,
see you too. All
yeah,
right,
nice
Phil.
meeting you,
Okay.
Elizabeth. Nice
You
meeting
too.
you. Is the sound okay?
Your sound sounds good. How does
Good.
mine sound to
Yeah,
you?
very good. Very
Okay,
good. Yeah.
fantastic. So we just have a couple more minutes and then we'll go
Sure.
ahead and go live. And I have
Okay.
Tori here, my assistant, so she helps me do all this. It's a lot quite to do to figure it out.
Oh, I can imagine.
Yeah, it's not intuitive, that's for sure.
No, and even these video conferences, I go to get my microphone going. There's like 3 microphones, and half the time I'm on the wrong one, and I got to click through it. That's why I was
Oh yeah, yeah.
paranoid to make sure I got it right today because it doesn't always work. So,
Well, we learned. I think the first one we did, one of my guests was outside, and it was a little bit hard because the you could hear the winds. We didn't even think to, know who thinks of those
yeah,
type of things. Yeah.
I was doing one of these with Mary Winters on Friday, and we went to start it, and she said Facebook wasn't streaming, wasn't working. We couldn't do it.
Oh, you never did do it.
No, because she couldn't get it. Facebook was giving her a message that it wasn't able to stream at that point or something.
Oh my gosh.
And so we never did it. We did it. It was going to be at 7 in the morning,
Oh wow.
7:30.
That's a
So anyway,
bummer.
yeah. So hopefully we will have it here. So anyway,
Did you have court today?
I did, but it's right here, my desk.
That's got to
So
be
different.
so great.
So different. Yeah, it's really nice actually at times, but this one was complicated. The judge was getting, he says, I think it's wearing off on me. He was getting really cranky, kept apologizing. But there was like four or five attorneys. The facts were complicated and trying to sort it out. Everybody's on the phone. He said, if you guys were here in person, we could knock this out in a couple minutes. So.
Oh, okay. I'm going to go ahead and pin you.
Okay.
Gallery. Let me do that first. Pin. Okay, let me do you to add pin. Okay. And then they just stay like that. Okay, that's good. Okay, we're going to go on in just 1 minute.
Okay.
We're working on it now, so we'll be on in a sec.
It's now streaming.
All right. Hi, everybody. We're here. All right. Phil, we are live on Facebook.
Oh, that's.
So welcome. I'm excited.
Well, thank you.
goodness to have
Thank you for inviting me.
Tori here to help. So we're going to go ahead and get started. Hi, everybody. I am Cynthia Cohn, and thank you so much for joining us today. I am here in my living room with a special guest joining me for this week's Fireside Chat. And you can see I'm in my living room, but I do not have a fire on. I'd love to, but it's probably about 85 degrees and beautiful today. And as many of you know, I own a residential real estate brokerage in Pasadena, California, and I specialize in executor and trustee sales. And my company is called Cynthia Cohn and Associates. And one of the my favorite parts of actually owning this business is really bringing people together and serving as a trusted resource to my network. I started really hosting these fireside chats as a way really to do just that. Every other week, I invite an expert in their field to join us and to answer some of your very important questions and really give you insight into a more nuanced industries and markets. So far, since I started doing this, we've talked about the 2021 real estate market through the buyer's lens. We've talked about actually how to purchase a multi-family property in this current real estate market. And 2 weeks ago, we spoke to Delinda Crampton up in Las Vegas. She is a real estate broker and really talked about what is going on in the Las Vegas real estate market. And this week, I'm so excited. We have one of my very dear friends. We have Phil Barbaro joining us to talk about the 4 reasons why everyone needs some estate planning. Phil Barbaro, he's actually a junior, is a partner at the law firm of Barbaro, Chinen, Pitzer Duke, right in Pasadena on Colorado Boulevard. And he is the firm's primary litigator. He focuses primarily in the areas of trusts, wills, conservatorships, elder abuse, undue influence, and other probate-related matters. I've had the opportunity and pleasure to work with him on multiple occasions. I'm very grateful to him for that opportunity. And he is certified as a specialist in estate planning, trust, and probate law by the State Bar of California Board of Legal Specialization. He lives in Pasadena with his beautiful family. He loves the coast of California up in the Oxnard area and is a sailor. So, Phil, you are one of my top resources for estate planning, and I would love for you to share a little bit about yourself before we actually get started.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you, Cynthia. Thank you for inviting me. I really appreciate it, and appreciate what you do. As you know, when you when usually I call you, it's not for a very simple task. It's usually something that's in the middle of litigation, and you have been able to help us on many occasions, and clients are very grateful for that. Yeah, my background, I've been practicing for quite a while. I do a lot of litigation in my past. I do estate planning as well, but I do the litigation in the areas of probate, trust, conservatorship, as well as the administration. So just a regular probate with no problems is also welcome, as well as a trust administration. I represent a lot of private professional fiduciaries. These are individuals that are licensed by the state to act in the role of conservators, trustees, executors appointed by the court. And I do a lot of speaking at their various conferences. I'll be speaking in August at their annual California conference later, it'd be in late August. Anyway, so I appreciate the opportunity to talk about estate planning. I do this on a daily basis here. And one of the things I learned is that you can't take anything for granted. It doesn't matter if you have a client who's well educated in whatever field. When it comes to estate planning, there's always a lot of questions. And one of the joys I get out of practicing is being able to educate people on that. And that's what we're going to do tonight.
That's what we're going to do. That's right. I have a question for you, Phil. I mean, you are really one of the leading, attorneys in Southern California in this area. And I'm just curious, what inspired you to get into this area of law?
Well, that's a very good question. I did my practice. I've been practicing a long time. And I did criminal for several years. I did personal injury for several years, a lot of real estate litigation. I fell into a case once with someone who actually had no money, had no ability to hire me, but was getting really taken advantage of, and was about to lose an inheritance that her father had left her by someone trying to do something that was not proper. And I took the case. Really not knowing a whole lot about it. This we're talking about maybe 25 years ago, about probate litigation and that type of thing. And it was a life-changing experience for her. We were able to be successful. Ultimately, she was able to inherit what her father wanted her to have, and she was set, for life, at least to get her going. And it just felt good to be able to help someone in that vein. So what I do now a lot of times is elder abuse type of cases, undue influence. Unfortunately, there's situations where people get taken advantage of, and there's a lot of satisfaction in being able to help someone who otherwise would have no recourse against someone who knew how to use the system, and now is able and be able to stop it and get it back for them. Mm-hmm. So it's more of being able to help people. More than anything else, that's really what I enjoy about it.
I love that. We have that in common, because really protecting my clients is one of my core values of my company. And I realized how I got to that it was actually one of my own personal core values. It stemmed back from just feeling protected as a child growing up. And so it's so important. And I love that you're out there doing this. And I know when we work together, you're doing just that.
Yeah.
So tell me, we have a list of questions we're going to go through, and hopefully we will have things wrapped up by about 5:45, and hopefully we leave a little bit of time for questions from our guests or anybody watching on Facebook Live. But let's really start at the beginning, Phil. So can you explain to us, what is estate planning? What does it mean exactly?
Yeah, and that's a fundamental question. And that's the first thing we talk about. Estate planning, the first thing I dispel with anybody is they feel that they have to have a will or a trust, otherwise the state is going to get all of their assets. And that's not true. If you don't have anything, the law provides that it's going to go to your next of kin, and there's a whole litany of where it's going to go: to your parents, to your kids, to no kids, and to your parents or brothers or sisters, all the way down the line. So it's not a reason, it's not based on having to go to the state or avoiding that, but it's to allow you to make the decision of where you want it to go. In many cases, they don't want it to go to family, or they want it to go to charity or other places. So the primary role is to be able to dispose of your assets the way you want. But more importantly, or as importantly, is the fact that it, in addition to having that component, it also has a component that has to do with things while you're alive. Two of the most important documents in an estate plan are your durable power of attorney for health, for financial matters, and an advanced healthcare directive for medical. And those are two documents that you need during your lifetime. And we're going to talk about that in more detail, I think, because I think those are two of the most important documents that most people aren't aware of. And I'll give examples of how that is important. And that has to do with what doesn't matter what type or size of your estate. Everybody needs to have that. And again, we'll talk about that as to why. So an estate plan basically is a organized approach to dealing with your assets when you pass away, as well as having things in place while you're alive.
Mhm. It's so important, not just the money part, especially if you're a family and you have children,
Right.
because you can make those decisions in advance
Mhm.
as well. That's wonderful. So that's pretty much why someone really should consider having an estate plan, correct?
Yeah, because many people think, well, I don't have, millions of dollars, so why would I want a trust?
Mm-hmm.
I don't own real property. Why would I want an estate plan? Well,
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of reasons why. I'll give you a couple of examples. If you have a minor child, for example, you're going to want to have a trust where you can designate how you want your assets to go. In other words, if you don't have a trust at 18, they would get everything. So if you have life insurance and things that are going to help support a minor in the event you were to pass, all that would go to them at 18 if you didn't have something in place. So when we create a trust, if there's minor children involved, we would create within the trust a subtrust that says, okay, upon death, things are going to be divided a certain way. But if a beneficiary child is under a certain age, then we talk about, what do you want to do? Do you want it to go to them at 18? Do you want to give them a little bit at 21, a little bit at 25, and the rest of it at another age, or whatever the circumstances are? So you have that ability to control it. And that is something, it's a dynamic document. So the fact that you don't have assets today doesn't mean 10 years, 15 years from now, you're not. But that document can control all that. So that's just one example of what you want to consider.
Does estate planning encompass like all of the pieces together, or can an estate plan for someone that might not want to go to the expense or put a trust together? Does an estate plan also include, obviously, just taking care of your advanced directives?
You could do that as well. I mean, it would be a typical estate plan would be a trust, a will, power of attorney, and a healthcare directive, typically.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
But I do have clients, and I do prepare they just need a will. They just want a will, power, and the healthcare and power of attorney. So yes, you'd still would want a will, because you just never know where an asset's going to come from. If you don't have an asset today, doesn't mean at the time when you pass, there won't be an asset for you, or there could come in another way. You could inherit it from someone. You could, who knows where you can come from. Lottery, we've had that, lottery winners. So you have no idea. So having at least a will, and then your healthcare directive and your power of attorney I think are essential.
Okay. All right. That makes a lot of sense. Can you talk a little bit about what a trust is?
Sure. Yeah, that's obviously the very first question. What everybody hears about a trust, but it's like, what exactly does a trust do? And I explain it to clients. I said, basically what it is, it's an agreement with yourself. That's what it is. It's a document, it's a contract. And what it says is, I'm creating this document, and I'm instructing the trustee of this trust that I'm creating to handle my affairs according to what I say in this document. Now, you make yourself the trustee. So you're both the creator, being the trustor, and you also make yourself the trustee. So you're totally in control. Even after you create your trust, you have total control over all your assets. So then within that document, you indicate how you want it to be distributed. Some are very basic, just give it to my kids equally. And then maybe if they're minors, or you might have provisions for a subtrust. And some are very complicated, where they want to have a portion going to a different place. So it's the document. There's no one size fits all for a trust. But basically, what it is it gives the trustee the ability to transact business. And the example I give clients for this is, if you think of yourself, if you own a piece of property and you want to transfer that property, you want to sell it to somebody, well, you would sign a deed and transfer it to them. All right. So if you own a piece of property, but now you're deceased, who's going to sign that deed? Nobody. So if there's nobody and there's no trust, your only option is to petition the court for probate and get a representative appointed, either an executor or administrator, depending on whether or not there's a will. And that person now has the ability to transact business, and they could sell that property. With a trust, what you do is you give the power of sale to the trustee. So your trustee now has that ability to sell. So when you create a trust, you have to transfer assets to the trust. So after the trust is created, if someone owns real property, we transfer title of the property from their name as individuals to their names as trustees of their trust. Now that asset is in the trust. If they were to pass, they don't have to go to probate. The trustee of the trust has the power to sell that property. So that's when you hear, it avoids probate. That's what is being talked about.
That's terrific. I know, I was just thinking when I refinanced, whether I had to take my house out of a trust or not. And I know a lot of people say that they will take it out of the trust, refinance their house, and then forget to put it back in the trust.
Yeah, you want to put it back. You put it back. Yeah, I've had those calls before where clients, we put it in, and then 15 years later when they pass, we find out it wasn't in the trust because they refinanced and they forgot to put it back in.
Yeah.
And now you're dealing with possibly a probate. There is a procedure where you could get it back in the trust, but you still got to go to court.
Yeah. Are you finding, and just out of curiosity, are you finding more families opting for fiduciaries to take over that part of the trust, like the financial part, or?
Right, like to make the trustee. Yeah, it's a conversation we have, and I make it very clear to my clients. If they have a number of kids, they're like, well, I don't want to offend, one of my kids by not making them trustee. I tell them it is not a honor, it's a headache to be a trustee. And if you have a family dynamic that's, contentious or potentially contentious, all you're doing is now creating, kind of adding fuel to that fire. So many times I will suggest to them to use someone other than a relative as the trustee. And it could be any other trusted person. But if they don't even have that, I suggest a private professional fiduciary as a solution. And I'm doing that more and more, where they're putting them in because they say, well, at least that way it's a totally neutral person and they can, have that ability.
Yeah, I think it's good. I mean, I work, as you know, with a lot of many successor trustees. Many of them don't even live in the area.
Right.
And I know for all of us, I know for me, I can tell you, it's hard just to manage your own home and your own finances and a business, and let alone then if I had to take care of someone's own home as well, or their trust as well. It's an incredible, like you said, it's not necessarily it's an honor, it's almost can be a burden for some of these clients. So a professional fiduciary, if any of you listening would like a wonderful referral, please let me know. I have one in my own trust, just so that my sister doesn't feel completely burdened. if that were to happen. So, Phil, why is a will an important piece of the trust? I don't understand that part.
Right. That's also a very good question. And when it comes up, if I have a trust, why do I have a will? Well, the will that's created is a very basic will. It's called a pour-over will. And what it says is, if anything has to go through probate, the beneficiary of my estate is my trust, or the trustee of my trust. So it
Mhm.
pours into the trust. And the reason you have that, and it's far more common than you would think, um, only assets that are named are vested in the name of the trust can be controlled by that document. So when I do an estate plan, I'll put any real estate that they want, I'll put it into the trust. And by putting it into the trust, it simply means we're transferring it from individuals uh, to the individuals as trustees of their trust. So we move the property into the trust. But they now have bank accounts, or they might have life insurance policies, or they might have other assets. And when they pass, if it's in their individual names, then it's going to go through probate because it's not in the trust.
Mhm.
So in order to maintain the scheme that's set forth in the trust as to how you want to distribute it, the will says put it in the trust, but you still got to go through the probate process to get it into the trust.
Mhm.
And I'm literally going through that right now with a client who has a trust, has his properties in there, but his financial assets are not. And now we got to do a probate to get him into the trust.
Mhm. Oh
So
my gosh. Okay, that's
yeah,
helpful to know.
yeah,
And the other part you had brought up is the power of attorney. And I did want to just take definitely a few minutes and talk about
sure.
this. And I
Yeah,
know in an estate plan, can you explain to that us how that document works in
sure.
estate planning?
Sure. The one document is what's called the durable power of attorney for financial matters. And that's a document that provides that if a person can't give or is not competent to transact business, it says, I want this person to act as my agent, and we call it an attorney in fact, to transact business. Now, the important reason that's important, because the question is, well, if I have a trust, when my trustee do it? And that's true. The trustee will handle those assets. But if you have a situation where an asset's not in the trust, trustee's not going to be able to help you.
Mhm.
And if you're not deceased, there's not going to be an executor or administrator appointed. So you're in that limbo. So that's what this document does. It fills that gap. So your agent can go in if there's an account that he needs to access, he can get to it. But more importantly, it's more than just that. Has to do with credit cards. Do you ever try to get information or help somebody with their credit card? And if you're not the owner of that card, doesn't matter if it's a spouse, they're not going to give you any information. But if you have the power of attorney, you can do that. Something as basic as your utility bills. If you're not the named person on there, they're not going to talk to you. But if you have your power of attorney, they will talk to you.
Mhm.
So it's to be able to make things happen. Now, there's a number of other things that go on. And in the example I'll give, um, um, some of the things in terms of being able to file lawsuits, to defend, to do things, to basically to do what that person would do if they were able to. So it's a very important document. So it's someone to stand in for you when you can't stand up for yourself.
Yeah, I have a very dear friend of mine who sister um, it's a very long story, but son went missing and who was a college student. And they wanted to be able to obtain, he was over 18, and they wanted to obtain, they wanted to be able to check in on some of the apps on his phone or to check records or anything, check his bank card, check anything. They had no power. And if they had had a power of attorney for their young adult son, they could have actually, looked into things that they wanted to look into. So I don't know if that's coming up more and more where people for their young adult children that are out there ensuring that you have a power of attorney. So in case you need to access information,
Well,
able to.
and that's a good point that you brought up that I didn't mention. The fact that execute a power of attorney during your estate plan uh, doesn't necessarily mean it's effective at that moment.
Oh,
So there's two types. We call one a springing power, which means it's in place, but it only becomes effective once you're determined to lack capacity.
mm,
So long as you have capacity, your agent can't do anything on your behalf.
mm,
But you could also make one that's immediate, and so that the agent can act on your behalf. A lot of times you do this for older clients. They want their son or daughter to be able to help them. They
mhm.
still can handle things themselves, but this also gives their child the ability to do it.
Yeah, that's
So
great.
it does make a difference.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I don't want to give the impression that once you sign it, then that person now has, carte blanche to do whatever they want with your assets. They can't. It
Mhm,
depends on
mhm.
what you ask for.
Yeah. Okay. But it sounds like that's a big part of this
Oh
estate
yeah,
planning.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
And along with the advanced directive, how does that weave into this as well, Phil?
Yeah. So the durable powers for financial advanced healthcare directive is for medical, and so in the event you can't give informed medical consent, you're nominating somebody to make that choice, those decisions for you. And actually we usually try to do 2 or 3 successors in case that one's not available. And the reason for that is it's not a foregone conclusion that a spouse or a child is going to have absolute ability to make that call. If someone objects to it or creates, and there's case law on this, it gets really muddy. It's not an automatic thing. Typically, a spouse or something could, but if there's a problem with others, stepchildren or whatever, um, it's not clean. So this document makes it very clear who is going to make calls, who's going to make decisions for me. And then within that document, you also have the ability to make end of life choices.
Mhm.
Do you want to be, do you want to have life sustaining no matter what, or do you want to have, if things are, reach a certain point, you know you're giving instructions to your agent, this is how I want things to go, and we
Mhm.
talk about that, all the different options that you have. So
Mhm.
that document now puts you in a position where you have someone who can make healthcare decisions for you. And if I can give an example of how important those two documents are, most people young in particular won't consider thinking about having anything like this, and particularly somebody young with no assets would not consider this. But I dealt recently with a very tragic situation where a young man who had very modest assets, didn't have a healthcare directive or power of attorney, was in a catastrophic accident.
Sorry.
It's okay. Catastrophic accident. And because of that, he was totally incapacitated, couldn't do anything. So there was no one in place that could make medical decisions. There's no one in place that could handle finances. And in this case, there was a multitude of lawsuits, both to defend and that had to be prosecuted. So I got a call from attorneys that were representing him on some of these, his brother on some of these other things. They couldn't move forward because they had no powers of attorney, no healthcare directive. So I had to set up and get a conservatorship in place to get his brother appointed as conservator. Then as conservator, he was able to go out and create and deal with all this litigation. And in this particular case, they were able to recover millions. And we then actually then set up a trust under the probate proceeding, created a trust within that.
Mhm.
If he had a power of attorney and healthcare directive, that's all he would have needed. There would not be a need for a conservatorship.
Mhm.
They would have been able to do all of this without the burden, the expense, and the delay that having to do a conservatorship. So it's two simple documents that can prevent basically a long time. I mean, he's gonna, as long as he's alive, this conservatorship will be in place, and it's already been 4 or 5
Mhm.
years.
Mhm.
So
Unbelievable. So overall, you have your trust, you
correct.
have your will,
Uh-huh.
you have your power of attorney,
Right.
you have your advanced healthcare directives. Those are
Right.
the four components, main components.
Those are,
Okay,
yes. Yeah.
wonderful.
Right. And
I was thinking back some time ago to a family, and this really hit it home for me and why I got my estate plan, put together. A neighbor, husband and wife. The wife passed away, and then within 3 or 4 months, the husband passed away, and they had no estate planning whatsoever. And they had a young child, and they also had a child at PCC and who was old enough. I think she was like 21 or something like that, but not able to really take care of the young sister. And because there was no, advanced planning whatsoever, it was really just up to the family. Thankfully, they had some family to figure out what to do with the daughter.
right,
And because it was just one of the siblings just stepped forward and willing, not, so the mom never decided who was going to take care of the daughter.
right.
The family had to make the decision. And I thought back at that time, just thinking, like, just praying that whoever, was her conservator, had the same values, had the same, really, was committed to keeping her mother's memory alive. And their, traditions of that family keep that alive for that young daughter. And they did end up moving her far away to a new school district, and she had to start her life all over. And I was thinking, some advanced planning would have been amazing, because that family could have made some decisions, instead
Oh,
of,
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
it's heartbreaking.
yeah, and that's other component. I mean, there's so many things that go into a estate plan. I'm not covering them all, but you just touched on one. If you do have minor children, one of the components that we put in there is, who do you want to be a guardian?
Hmm.
And ironically, that's sometimes the toughest call that that parents have to make, is who do they want? Because they're thinking about, who do I want to raise my kid if I'm not here? Nobody even wants to think about that, but let alone but that's part of that will go in. So if I have if my clients have minor children,
Hmm.
that's the conversation we have, and then we nominate, because if you don't nominate, there's going to be a priority. But if you nominate, that is the priority. So if you want to control what's going to happen, you plan, just like you
Hmm.
said, you got a
Hmm.
plan, and
Yeah.
that is a component, and that's something that you put in the will, who you want to be the guardian.
Yeah. Yeah. So I know from past experience, and I work with many, many clients who have no form of estate planning, and it really honestly doesn't matter where their assets are, if they have a lot or a little.
Right.
When I talk to people, it is one of the questions I will ask them. And having this amazing resource of trusted advisors that I could refer, my friends and clients to, is so beneficial, because it does help protect their, financial house. Um, and it's always on everyone's list.
Right. Oh,
Honestly,
yeah.
if you look, okay, honey, what are we going to set up our goals for this year? Yeah, definitely got to get that trust done. And then you're like, okay, what does it cost? And then it ends up going on the bottom of
Yeah.
everyone's list. But I think everyone listening today, it is probably on everyone's list. It's
Yeah,
just,
it's very funny, because I'll many times I'll have this interview with clients. We'll go over everything. I'll even get to the point of drafting an initial draft. I won't hear back for a while, and there's just the inertia is there not to do it, because no one wants to think about it. But ultimately, the two things, traveling out of the country or surgery, are the two reasons where suddenly they'll call back, and then they'll say, not only can we do it, and then I'll just say, and you would like it next week, right? And she'll, yeah, so, well, yeah, actually we're going away. And so those are the things that get it to go. So yeah, it's not something that people do. And you'll read from time to time, lawyers of these large law firms die with the trust in their drawer. They haven't even signed it. And
yeah.
so, it's not a comfortable conversation, but try to make it very easily, because the exemption amount is so high, meaning that there's not an inheritance tax that's paid unless you have a substantial estate, being roughly 11.4 million, almost $12 million.
Hmm.
There's not going to be an inheritance tax for a single person. If it's married couple, it's twice that. So, most of my clients are not in that category. So I don't have to get into the finances of everybody. It's not all that complicated. It's a matter of sitting down and going over a few questions, and then more of what I do is prompt them to think about things they hadn't thought about. Like, this is where you want it to go, but if for some reason it can't go there, what's plan B? Because it happens. I want it to go to, so and so, but if so and so were to predecease, where do you want it to go after that? So it's more of a conversation, and it's not as intimidating or onerous or complicated as they might otherwise think.
Yeah, especially if they work with you, it's also fun.
Hopefully.
So what would you say, Phil, are the 4 really basic reasons that people should take care of their estate planning?
It's going to depend on where they're at in their stage. So if you have minor kids, you're going to want to think in terms of, I want to be able to control how my estate is distributed. Do I want my kids to get it all at 18, or do I want them to dole it out? So it has to do with that aspect of it. The main one is to be able to control how things are distributed. That's one. 2, going back to the minors, being able to designate who I want as my guardian for my child. And maybe in that, put some provisions in there about, these are my thoughts in terms of schooling and that type of thing. So that's kind of one component. Another component is having a power of attorney, no matter where you're at in life, in place, because without a power of attorney for financial matters, there could be a problem if something were to come up and you suddenly were incapacitated for some reason. So that's important. A healthcare directive for the exact same reason. You never know. There might be a situation where you can't give informed consent because of unconsciousness or something else. It might be a temporary situation, but nonetheless, you can't give that informed consent. You want somebody in place that you trust to make those decisions. And then, of course, with a will, you want to be able to have an orderly transfer. And so you have a will, but you have with a trust, you can avoid probate, with that.
Right.
There are a number of other reasons, but those are the ones that almost everybody should consider.
Yeah. And apps, I mean, all of us need to be really considering this. And especially, I can't tell you, I have so many friends. I'm 54. I have so many friends my age that have parents that are aging, that have no estate planning. And some are parents are starting to experience memory loss. And without those documents, it's going to be a lot more challenging, taking care of them. And so wonderful, Phil. This has been just terrific. And I really appreciate you answering these super important questions. I know that we have a few questions from our guests, so I do want to open it up to anybody that is in the Zoom room. Bill or Elizabeth, if they have questions. Do any of you have questions? I know we have a couple Facebook questions as well.
Yeah, Phil, I do. First of all, Phil, not only are you competent, but you're one of the nicest people I ever met. I do appreciate that.
Thank you, Bill.
Very interesting thing happened to me recently. I love your comment. I met with a owner of 17 properties in LA County commercial, and he did not have a trust.
Oh,
but he had an estate planning lawyer, or would have brought you in, and we created a trust. He passed away on April 15th. And I cannot imagine me trying to handle these 16 commercial properties without a trust. He had 2 children, and he did give some of the children, one of the children a couple of properties and the other child a couple of properties. Well, now the children have already said to me, well, he gave my sibling more than he gave me, because he designated certain properties that each child would get.
Yeah.
But now we need to evaluate all of them, because they have the $11.7 million exclusion, and these properties are probably worth $40 million. But would love your comments about when a father or mother or both, when they create a trust and there's kids, what advice do you have about leaving certain items and certain properties to certain kids, and how do you prevent a dispute?
If I could prevent a dispute, I wouldn't still be in my office working tonight.
Right.
Yeah. Well, first of all, it's the parents' call on what they want to do. So we have a conversation, and if I know, for example, it's not an even division, we'll have a conversation about that. If that's what they want to do, that's what they want to do. And I'm dealing with that. I deal with that regularly. Now, sometimes, depending on what it is, I might recommend that maybe we have a meeting, and maybe we have the ability to sit down and let them know. But I'm dealing with situations where the client said, no, I don't want to have a meeting. So I'm begging him, how about a letter, something I can have in my file, so they know that, someone didn't put a gun to your head and do this the way it is. So we try to lay it all out, and I try to lay out, because a lot of what I do is litigation in these areas. I will point out to them what the potential fallout will be from that, and then they have to decide what they want to do. But ultimately, it's their call as to where they want their property to go. And if they want it to go unevenly, that's their choice.
Thank you. Good answer. Luckily, in this case, it looks like the properties that each of the siblings are going to receive are somewhat comparable in value,
Yeah, that's
which
good.
helps. But, for somebody to say, Phil gets these two and Cynthia gets these two and Tina and Elizabeth get these two, all of a sudden, when it's sort of arbitrary and they're different values, sadly, that will become a problem unless it states that when you sell the rest of the properties, you'll make up for whatever the appraisal
Right, yeah.
differences were. Maybe
Equalize
that's
it.
the way you do it.
Right. And there's many situations where, it's not equal among the kids for whatever reason. And our role is not to tell them how to distribute their assets, but just to educate them on what they can do and what will likely come down the pike once they do it. But that's still their choice.
Yeah, Phil, I've seen kids completely cut out of the will. I'm sure you have too.
Yeah.
And it's just the parents, that was their decision.
Well, and that's, totally another aspect of a lot of what I do is, when were they cut out? Were they cut out right after the parent came out of surgery and suddenly signed a revocation? Or were they
Yeah.
cut out after a thoughtful analysis by their estate planning attorney they've had for a long time? So those are the things that we look at. And that's where undue influence and elder abuse, those type of claims come in.
That's really hard. Yeah. Yeah. Joe gets the house in San Marino and Bob gets the warehouse in Barstow.
Yeah.
And I've seen that. And it's anyway, that's why we hire Phil.
Well, yeah, or worse yet, the caregiver gets the house and the warehouse.
Yeah.
That's
Thank you.
And the kids get nothing. So it's all out there. You can't make this stuff up.
No,
Yeah.
no.
Appreciate
How
it.
about you, Elizabeth? You have a question?
I do. First of all, Phil and Cynthia, thank you for making the value of a trust so clear. My
Okay.
question is, what should your clients budget in terms of time and money for establishing a trust?
That's a good question as well. And to be the way I handle it, and this is just me, it's not every attorney. Everybody's situation is different. And I will have people come in and I'll do an initial consultation. And I won't even charge them for that consultation, because until I know what they have and what they want to accomplish, it's hard for me to kind of give them an idea. But when we're done with that conference, they'll have an idea. But basically a basic plan, could be anywhere from, 1,800 to, 3,500, depending on what it is, without any type of tax planning, something like that. Now that's, that you can't use that number as a go, because that's just kind of where I'm at with it. Other attorneys, charge all different, they're all over the place. But it's really, to me, it's all about a relationship. And so I'd much rather have someone come in, meet me, and get a sense of comfort knowing that, what they want is going to be handled. The other question I get is, because I've been practicing a while, and I will be practicing for a lot, longer. They said, well, what about, are you going to be around in, 10 years or whatever? I said, well, probably, but I have young partners. Our firm is, we're 130 years old. Last month was 130 years that our firm was established, not by this name, but the guys that founded it. And, we just added 2 more attorneys that are, we're going to go for a lot longer. So our firm will be able to handle estate planning for well into the future.
Thank you. That's really helpful.
Very helpful, Phil. Either of you, anyone else have any questions, Tina? I know we have any Facebook questions.
A lot of the Facebook questions echoed the Zoom
Oh, good.
questions.
Okay. I guess the last question I was going to ask you, some of these online companies that allow you to create something very easily just from a click of your mouse.
Right.
Why? There are a few reasons definitely why not to go in that direction and hire an attorney. And if you're hiring an attorney, how do you go about finding the right person to prepare your estate plan?
Yeah. Well, the fill in the blank type of document thing, most of the time people aren't going to understand what it is they actually are doing. And a lot of those are the subjects of some of the litigation I do. Some, whether it's online or they're just doing it themselves, and they'll omit something that creates a complication. I've litigated a case, a week-long trial over 2 words in a trust, and it went up on appeal, and we had to have the Court of Appeal ultimately deal with it. It was $1 million question that was in my client's favor. We won, but it was just poor drafting that did it, and we had to when there's money at stake, people fight. So that's one reason. You want somebody who actually understands what's there. And the fact that I do litigation, I actually see trusts that are the subject of litigation. So we see some of the issues. And the issues can be all kinds of things, So anyway, that's one reason. And then just doing something online, they aren't going to understand what it is. And as far as finding an attorney, it's like you would do anything else, call around. And that's one reason why I invite people to come in and let me meet me and make their decision at that point.
And I love that you do that, just a complimentary consultation, so you have an understanding of what their needs are, and then you can propose a plan of action. And if they want to hire you and move forward, they can do at that time.
Yeah.
Well, Phil, thank you so much for your time today. It's always such a pleasure to see you and hear the importance of estate planning. And everyone who's listening today, if this conversation piqued your interest in any way, please do not hesitate to reach out to me. You can reach me at 626-714-6808. And I will be sending out a follow-up email with more information. And I know Phil is more than happy to answer any questions you have about estate planning. Phil, what is the best way for our listeners to reach you?
Either calling my office, which is 626-793-5196, or emailing me at pbarbaro, BARBARO, at 1891law.com. It's 1891law.com.
Okay, fantastic. And you're also located right in Pasadena, right across from the Paseo on Colorado.
Right from City Hall, overlook City Hall.
That's such a great location.
Yeah.
And we will put your contact information in our post tomorrow, just so everyone is able to get a hold of you if they have questions.
Wow.
And thank you again to everybody for joining our fireside chat. I really can't wait to see you. Our next one is with Liza Kerrigan, and we will be discussing, very interesting, the accessory dwelling unit. She is an architect with Blue Studio right in Sierra Madre, and she has a plethora of information about accessory dwelling units and how what is going on and what's going on with the county and how you could add maybe a unit to your house. And that's going to be on May 19th at 5 p.m. So thank you. I wish you all a wonderful Cinco de Mayo, and we will see you again in 2 weeks. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Cynthia.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.